All right, welcome back to the Weekend Prime Time. President Trump's crusade against blue cities is heading to Portland, where he says he is sending in the troops. Posting on Truth Social, quote, "At the request of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, I'm directing the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. I'm also authorizing full force if necessary." NBC News is reporting that Pentagon officials appeared to be surprised by Trump's post and said that they were not aware of any new orders to send troops into Portland. And no information was relayed as to what kind of troops or how many will actually be sent to the city. But officials in Oregon are now pushing back. Here's what the mayor of Portland said just earlier today.
The administration has refused to elaborate on what they mean when they say they will deploy full force against our city and citizens. I will also say this: avoiding the unknown element will not help us prevent from joining together to bring our voices and speak as one and call for an end to federal government unwanted, unneeded, and un-American deployment to the city that we all love.
And Senator Jeff Merkley says that Trump, quote, wants to stoke fear and chaos and trigger violent interactions and riots to justify expanded authoritarian control, and urges those in Oregon to not take the bait. Senator Jeff Merkley joins us now. Senator, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you for making time for us. You've had a few more hours to process this and try perhaps to get a better understanding of what it is that Donald Trump is talking about here. What is your reaction to how things have developed?
Well, I'll tell you, last night when we had the emergency press conference with about 15 city officials, state officials, myself, Senator Wyden, and others, we thought that maybe hundreds of people forces were going to be pouring into our city last night. We had no idea, because there was no communication with state officials about what was going on. But given those types of words, that the Department of War is sending all necessary deployment in order to utilize full force against the city, and just the wording of Trump saying, "I plan a big number on those people in Portland." We were preparing for the streets to be full today. We haven't seen that. But here is the thing: these troops are uninvited. They are unneeded. The city has been calm. The city murder rate this year is down by 50% year over year. I think the largest increase for any major city in America. It's on the rebound. It's in good shape, and any challenges can be handled locally. So the picture that Trump's painting of our city is completely wrong. But why does he want to do this? He knows that when he sent troops back in 2020, 5 years ago, they proceeded. Well, we just had these videos of these peaceful protesters being just beaten up so badly, and the result was people were infuriated, which increased more interaction, and ultimately that interaction was a major problem for the city, and it was hard to stop once it got going. So we're telling people, don't take the bait. He wants to create riots and chaos here. Let's not play his.
And as we just talked about, he's sending troops to Portland. I mean, what do you make of all of this?
Well, it seems very similar to the deployment in Los Angeles that we had earlier this year, Veronica. And one of the things that is important to note here, it depends really on how President Trump deploys these troops and what kind of troops he's deploying. If it's active duty military, they're going to be under the Posse Comitatus Act, which means that they really cannot be used for law enforcement purposes. So it limits the scope of action that they would have. The other thing is, if he nationalizes the National Guard, the Oregon National Guard or other National Guard elements from other states, that falls under a different set of rules, and those rules could allow them to be part of a law enforcement effort. It seems as if the deployment is based on the idea of protecting ICE facilities and ICE agents as they go about their duties. But it is, definitely a slippery slope, because local authorities, as you pointed out, are not requesting these troops. They don't see a need for them. And it happens to be the case that crime rates in Portland are actually decreasing during this period of the last year or so. So it's questionable as to what the rationale really is for doing this.
Was a major problem for the city, and it was hard to stop once it got going. So we're telling people, don't take the bait. He wants to create riots and chaos here. Let's not play his game.
Senator, so we saw that in Los Angeles, he sent troops and it was deemed to be illegal. We saw that in Chicago, they were able to push back in a way that made him lose interest in going into Chicago, at least for now. Are there lessons you can learn from these two situations that can help you in your state?
You know, absolutely. And the law that applies here is from post-Reconstruction, and it's called Posse Comitatus. And it says you can't use federal troops to police around the United States. And initially it was a pushback on Reconstruction, as I mentioned, and the troops were used to ensure people had the opportunity to vote. But it came to be viewed as a way to make sure that as you get a stronger and stronger military, no president ever uses that military to assert authoritarian control over the country. They're here to defend our country from outside forces. And that's why this game that Trump is playing is so dangerous. It's a piece of an authoritarian strategy that starts to legitimize the deployment of military forces here inside the United States. And the main excuse that is used is, well, there's chaos that needs to be addressed, or there's an emergency that needs to be addressed. Well, he's creating the chaos, he's creating the emergency, and we want to broadcast that loud and clear. We want to undermine any possible sense among anyone across the country that there's any legitimacy to what Trump is undertaking.
Senator Merkley, let's shift gears slightly to the looming government shutdown, which would happen in 3 days if a deal isn't reached. So Donald Trump canceled a meeting with Senator Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, but now the leadership's going to the White House on Monday to meet with Trump. What do you want them to get out of the meeting? And is there one concession that must be in the budget for you to support it?
Well, what Trump has to understand is that Democrats are not going to support another partisan continuing resolution. Never happened before in our history before March 15th of this year. We're not going to let it happen. It did happen then. Enough Democrats provided votes. We're not going to do that again. And there are two main issues here. One is the power of the purse. What has transpired between March 15th and now is repeated efforts by the administration to decide what programs are funded and which aren't, by slowing down funds, freezing funds, impounding funds, doing rescissions, doing pocket rescissions, all of these tactics. All of those certainly violate the spirit of the Constitution and really the letter of the Constitution, which assigns the power of the purse to Congress. The president implements a program. And when Nixon tried to proceed to cut programs, the Supreme Court said no. In 1996, when Congress passed a line item veto, gave the president power to cancel programs, the Supreme Court said no, it's a sign in the Constitution to Congress. We have to reclaim that and put an end to that strategy. That's very important. The second is health care, because what's about to happen is a very significant increase in health care for people buying insurance on the exchange. A projected 65% increase, $1,300 average per person, more than $5,000 for a family of four. And that will probably not just be increases on the exchange. It will probably roll out in an impact to folks who get health insurance in other markets. And a lot of those people will simply not then get health coverage. And that means there'll be less revenues for our hospitals and our clinics. And this is just the first stage of a multi-stage attack on our healthcare system. The next stage in January 2027 is when a horrific assault on Medicaid begins. So we're saying no, healthcare is important. You proceeded to cut it savagely in order to do tax breaks for billionaires. This is a families lose, billionaires win strategy, and instead we need a families win and billionaires pay their fair share.
Senator, I want to switch gears, if I can, to one more foreign policy issue. As you are fully aware, the Israeli Prime Minister is going to meet with Donald Trump at the White House on Monday. We saw this week, just yesterday, his comments at the UN, massive walkout by dozens of countries at the United Nations. You and Senator Chris Van Hollen recently toured the region. You came out with a very powerful report calling what Israel is doing ethnic cleansing in Palestine and in Gaza. What message does Donald Trump need to deliver to the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu? Do you think it will happen, or what do you want to see happen as a result of this meeting?
The message he should be delivering is that the U.S. will not be complicit in a strategy of ethnic cleansing. It's involved a strategy of destroying homes, blowing them up so there's no place to return to, and then deprivation of food and medicine and clean water. And these so violate American principles and international law. That's what the president should say. Do I expect him to say that? I do not. I don't think the president has any real understanding of international law or American values in this kind of human rights world. Where he needs to be tough and strong and firm and defend our values and say hell no to what's going on right now.
Trump is once again weaponizing fear to tighten his grip on power. He calls Portland war-ravaged, yet crime is down, the city is calm, and the leaders are begging him to stay out. That's the truth. What is happening here is not protection, but provocation. He wants chaos, because chaos gives him an excuse to send troops where they don't belong. Think about it. Federal soldiers patrolling American streets against the wishes of the people there and the mayors and the governors. This is not democracy. This is authoritarian muscle. Trump is busy playing commander-in-chief of a domestic war that doesn't exist. Real global threats are being ignored for this. Generals are pulled from their posts to attend his political rallies. You need to see the pattern here. This is not about safety. This is control. When a president treats cities like battlegrounds and fellow citizens like internal enemies, the system is bent toward dictatorship. Don't be fooled by the rhetoric of law and order. This is Trump manufacturing emergencies to justify abusing military power. America is not a playground for his ego or his power abuse, and the more we let him push, the closer we are to losing the republic itself.